Hello, future doctors and engineers. Get ready, because today we are solving a cosmic detective story, a mystery that connects every single one of us.
Just think about it for a second. You, me, the trees outside, the tiniest bacteria, where did we all come from? That's the big question, right? And it's the absolute heart of this entire chapter on evolution. So let's jump right in and start investigating.
You see, to really understand evolution, we can't just start in the middle. We've got to go back, way, way back, to the very beginning of life itself. Chalo, let's fire up our time machine.
Now just look at the scale of this timeline. It's mind-blowing. The universe itself is born about 13.8 billion years ago. Our Earth shows up much later, around 4.5 billion years ago. And then it took another 500 million years for the first signs of life to appear. We are talking about spans of time that are just impossible to truly imagine.
So, what was this early Earth like? Well, it was definitely not a vacation spot. Imagine this: no atmosphere to breathe, crazy high temperatures, and volcanoes erupting everywhere. The atmosphere was what we call reducing, which basically means there was no free oxygen floating around, just stuff like methane, ammonia, and water vapor. And with no ozone layer yet, harsh UV rays from the sun were just blasting the surface.
So the million-dollar question is, in a place like that, how did life even begin? Well, there were a few ideas. One old theory was spontaneous generation, the idea that life just popped up from mud or straw. But the great Louis Pasteur completely proved that wrong. Then there's the cool idea of panspermia, that life arrived from outer space as tiny spores. But the theory that most scientists agree on today.
Chelya, let's break down chemical evolution. Oberon and Haldane proposed it was like a step-by-step recipe. Step 1, you start with the simple inorganic molecules already in the atmosphere. Step 2, add a bolt of lightning or a blast of UV rays for energy. This cooks up simple organic molecules like amino acids. Step 3, these simple molecules start linking together to form more complex stuff like proteins and RNA. And finally, step 4, these complex molecules clump together, forming the first little self-replicating capsules, and boom, you have the very beginning of life.
But, a hypothesis is just an idea until you've got proof. And that's where Miller and Urey came in, back in 1953. They basically built a mini early Earth in their lab. They took a flask, filled it with methane, hydrogen, ammonia, and water vapor, heated it up to 800 degrees, and zapped it with electric sparks, just like ancient lightning. And the result? They actually created amino acids. It was the first hard evidence that, chemical evolution could have actually happened.
Okay, so life have started, check. But how did we go from one simple little cell to the millions of different species we see today, from elephants to eagles to us? That's the next part of our detective story. It's time to look for clues.
Now, this is a super important one for your exams, so listen carefully. Lamarck versus Darwin. It's a classic point of confusion. Lamarck's idea was use and disuse. He thought giraffes stretched their necks to reach high leaves, and this stretched neck was then passed on to their kids. But Darwin came along and said, nope, that's not how it works. He argued that variations already exist. In any group of giraffes, some are just born with slightly longer necks. Those ones get more food, survive better, and have more babies. That's survival of the fittest. You don't inherit acquired traits.
So, what's our first big piece of evidence for evolution? Clue number 1. Fossils. Think of them like time capsules buried underground. The deeper you dig through the layers of rock, the further back in time you go. And what we find is that the fossils in each layer are different, proving that life on Earth has changed over time. Dinosaurs are the most famous example, of course.
Okay, clue number 2. And guys, this table is pure gold for NEET. Homologous structures have the same basic design but different functions. Think about the forelimb of a human, a whale, and a bat. The bone pattern is the same because we share a common ancestor. That's divergent evolution. The opposite is analogous structures. These have different designs but the same function, like the wing of a butterfly and the wing of a bird. They evolve separately to do the same job. That's called convergent evolution.
So we've seen the evidence. The clues are all there. But now for the main question. How does evolution actually work? What's the engine driving all this change? What's the mechanism?
One key mechanism is adaptive radiation. This is when one single ancestor gives rise to many new species that radiate out to fill different ecological roles. The two textbook examples you have to know are Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands, where their beaks adapted for different foods, and the incredible variety of Australian marsupials, like kangaroos and koalas, which all evolved from one ancestral stock.
But can we actually see natural selection happening in real time, not just in fossils?
Absolutely. And the most famous example is the fascinating story of the peppered moths in England.
So here's the story. Back in the 1850s, before heavy industry, the trees were covered in light-colored lichen. So the white moths blended in perfectly, while the dark ones were easy snacks for birds. But then the Industrial Revolution came along, and soot from factories turned the trees dark. Suddenly, the tables turned. The dark moths were now camouflaged, and the white ones stood out. So the dark moth population exploded. Just imagine this happening near industrial areas in India, like Kanpur or Delhi. And remember this simple trick. Coal equals black moth win.
And evolution isn't just some old story. We humans are actually the biggest force driving evolution on the planet right now. We call it anthropogenic, or human-caused evolution.
Let's take a very serious example from our daily lives here in India. Why are drug-resistant strains of TB and malaria such a huge problem? It's evolution in action. Every time we overuse antibiotics, we kill the weak bacteria. But any that happen to be naturally resistant, they survive, they multiply, and soon you have a population of superbugs. The key takeaway here is huge. Evolution isn't just history, it's happening right now, all around us, and it's happening fast.
Okay, we've talked about the concepts and we've seen the examples, but science loves numbers. So, is there a mathematical way to check if a population is actually evolving or not?
Yes, there is. It's called the Hardy-Weinberg principle. Think of it as a baseline. It describes a perfect, imaginary population that is not evolving. For this genetic equilibrium to exist, 5 conditions have to be met. No mutations, no one moving in or out, no random chance events, completely random mating, and a very large population. The thing is, in the real world, one of these conditions is almost always broken, and that's what triggers evolution.
And of course, there's the famous equation, p squared plus 2pq plus q squared equals 1. It looks intimidating, but it's simple. P is the frequency of the dominant allele, and q is the frequency of the recessive allele. So p squared is the frequency of the homozygous dominant individuals, q squared is the homozygous recessive, and 2pq is the heterozygotes. If these numbers stay the same generation after generation, there's no evolution.
All right, it's time for the final chapter of our detective story. We're going to take everything we've learned and apply it to solve the mystery of our own story, the story of human evolution.
Here's a quick shortcut to remember the main stages. Just think of it like this. First, we had our ape-like ancestors. Then came the handy man, who first used tools. After him was the upright man, who started walking tall. And finally, the wise man. That's us, Homo sapiens.
Now, for a bit more detail, about 15 million years ago, we had Dryopithecus. Then, around 3 to 4 million years ago, the Australopithecines were walking upright. The first of our own genus was Homo habilis, with a brain of 650 to 800 cc. He was followed by Homo erectus, with a bigger 900 cc brain, and they mastered fire, a total game changer. Then we have the Neanderthals, with a big 1400 cc brain, who even buried their dead. And finally, us, Homo sapiens, who started creating things like caver.
If you want to see the single most important trend in human evolution, this chart says it all. Just look at that steady, dramatic increase in grain size, or cranial capacity. From habilis to erectus to sapiens, having a bigger brain has been the key feature of our evolution.
All right, let's do a super quick revision for the exam. Here are the top 5 takeaways. 1. Chemical evolution is the most accepted theory for life's origin. 2. Natural selection is the main engine of evolution. 3. Homologous structures prove common ancestry. 4. The Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is broken by 5 factors. And 5. Human evolution is defined by increasing brain size and walking upright. Got it? Perfect.
So we've learned that evolution is a process that never stops. It's happening right now. Which leaves us with one last big, thought-provoking question. What's next for us? What is the next step in the evolution of Homo sapiens?
And with that, our case is closed. For now. I really hope this explainer was helpful for you all. If it was, please hit that like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more helpful videos. All the best for your exams.